The last part of this particular PowerPoint, we're going to cover just the top two of these, and then we'll start the next PowerPoint with the last three of these miscellaneous antimicrobials. And then we'll cover antifungals and antivirals in the next PowerPoint. So, lincosamides. These antimicrobials target protein synthesis, and depending on their concentration at the site of treatment, they can be either static or cidal. The names are lincomycin, clindamycin, otherwise known as antirobe, and perlomycin, otherwise known as Persu. There is cross-resistance between these and between macrolides that we're going to talk about next. Lincosamides are good for most of them are good for gram-positive aerobic cocci. Lincomycin is approved for use in dogs, cats, swine, and poultry. The one that you're going to see a fair amount, though, in small animal clinics is clindamycin. And clindamycin differs from lincomycin. So this is kind of like the tetracycline name, where we've got the broad name of the group is lincosamides, and lincomycin is one of the drugs. So you just have to know that's a separate drug under that category as clindamycin. And clindamycin varies a lot from lincomycin in that it's good against anaerobic bacteria. And so it gets used a lot for anaerobic types of infections like pyodermas, abscesses, dental infections. That's where I used it a lot in practice. If an animal had a really bad mouth with like pus coming out of the between the teeth, I would go ahead and prescribe this drug because it was very good against anaerobes. Bite wounds, osteomyelitis, associated with Staph aureus in particular. But basically, you want to associate clindamycin with anaerobic infection treatment. These drugs are contraindicated in our critters that have this kind of hindgut fermentation. So rabbits, hamsters, chinchillas, guinea pigs, horses, and some of the ruminants. So there can be serious GI effects because they go after certain bacteria that then will cause really bad diarrhea. So even in approved species, we can get vomiting and diarrhea and bloody diarrhea. It usually goes away after administration, but it's something to be very aware of. So macrolides. Macrolides, again, target protein synthesis. They are bacteriostatic. These drugs are ones that get used if an animal is allergic to penicillins. These get typically called in as the substitute for penicillin, erythromycin in particular. So there's erythromycin, azithromax, azithromycin, which is known as zithromax, ilicin, known as Tylan, and telmicin, known as Micotil, and tulathromycin, which is called Draxin. And Draxin is one of the newer ones. And yes, we can treat fish with erythromycin. So these drugs are very well distributed. They do not go into the central nervous system, so we don't use them for treatment of that, but they do go into the prostate, and telmicin goes into lung tissue, which is used a lot in the bovine world. So cattle tend to be very susceptible to respiratory diseases. They have small lungs for the size of the animal, and but they don't need them like horses to run around a lot. So that's why their lungs aren't that big. But we do things to them. We ship them around the country. We put them in cattle cars, and they're exposed to dust and cold. And in that transport and change of environment, they are very susceptible to respiratory diseases, and they're crowded together, so they spread them. So a lot of drugs in the bovine world target respiratory diseases, and phomycin is one of them, because it's very effective in getting right to the site of action. Azithromycin also does this, and so we see it used for respiratory disease as well. Erythromycin can be used in foals, and it's used to treat Rhodococcus equi. We'll talk about another drug that is used in combination with it to treat that disease, but we don't use it in adult horses because it can produce fatal diarrhea. Um, we can use it IM for in ruminants for respiratory infections. So tilmycin, known as Ch.10l, this is really important to know about this drug. So put some asterisks around this one. The reason why this drug is so important is it's caused death in people. As I said, we use these drugs, this class of drugs, typically for respiratory diseases, and this one is very long acting. So when it came out, it was very attractive for bovine producers. And if, however, it goes IV, it can cause death in horses and swine and humans. It's irritating when it goes IM. So we typically use it sub-Q. What is really important about this is that producers have accidentally injected themselves. They've left uh, syringes uncapped, and when you're handling large animals, they can be pretty unpredictable. So it's really important to have appropriate restraint equipment, and I would encourage veterinarians that go to places that don't have the appropriate equipment, that they probably don't want to be there because and you guys are going to be on the front line of action, so you want to be really cautious and always careful that when you're handling large animals, there's appropriate restraint equipment, or you leave because it's more danger to you. But this drug in particular, if it's accidentally injected and goes IV, it can cause tachycardia and arrhythmias that result in death. There's been folks that have been injected and it's not happened to them, but for those that do react to this, there is no reversal agent. It has been used as a method of suicide, and so it is a controlled substance, even though it is not a typical, controlled substance, but it's abused in a different way. So it's an important one that has made the headlines in the bovine producer world, and you need to know of this very special precaution. Tylosin is one that we can get. It's typically comes in a tub and gets mixed up, and it's used in feeds. And so this is one that's been covered under the Feed Act that occurred last year. So producers now need to it's no longer available just in feed stores. Uh, Producers have to order the drug or order it if it comes in feed, and that has to be through a prescription from a veterinarian. It's used to promote growth, and that is a use that is being discouraged these days, so that may not be going on as much in the future. It is used to treat pink eye in cattle, so cattle will get pink eye that is contagious, and so we treat them, we get them away from other cattle, or we put an eye patch on. We make them into little pirates. It's a permanent eye patch. It's literally stuck on with glue, but it comes off in a couple weeks, and by then, hopefully, the pink eye has resolved. And it can also be used for swine dysentery, bacteria-mediated arthritis, porcine proliferative enteritis, otherwise known as PPE, and because honeybees are food animals, it is used sometimes to treat a condition called American foul brood. And I should say that's American foul brood. That's how you diagnose it. You put a toothpick into one of the little cells in the beehive, and oops, and I'm trying to move this frame down. And what you're seeing there is a goopy material that's been drawn out of there. It is a thread-like appearance of this stuff, and that's how you diagnose it. It's American foul brood. Other foul broods and some other diseases that commonly occur with honeybees, bees do not produce that thread of goop coming. That's basically a liquefied larvae is what's happening there. It's destroying the larvae. So Draxin is a relatively newcomer in this category, and the manufacturer claims that a single injection is good for 2 weeks in treating bovine respiratory disease. So that's a really good thing. And we don't have that complication of the arrhythmia and potential death with Draxin. It's also used for bovine pink eye and for foot rot treatments of those.